Hi and welcome to Journey to a Dream with me, Beth Espy. This podcast is brought to you by Kawasaki Insurance, and you can find out more about them at their website, kawasaki-insurance.co.uk. Now, the chat we have in this episode turned out to be a little bit different than expected. It didn't cover the usual details about many of the successes that he had. Instead, it's a really personal journey about what happens when things don't go to plan, how you deal with that, but also what happens when you have to give up that sport that you love or you make that decision. Let's meet today's guest.
Hello, I'm Paul Owen from Llangollen, North Wales. Race motorbikes, it's in my DNA because my dad did it.
So if we looked closely at you, Paul, you reckon there'd be oil running through your veins instead of blood, eh?
Yeah, well, people used to say that about my dad. If he cut himself, he'd bleed oil. And because when he was a kid, his granddad, was into bikes. And then I think he went to the Isle of Man when he was 13 or something like that. And then he just had a passion for bikes then. He raced for 20 odd years and then it just got passed down to me then basically. And I did it for just under 30 years. I took a few years out and back on track last week. So
for you then, it sounds like growing up, you didn't really know much other than this passion for bikes. And I'm wondering where the knowledge about the Isle of Man came in.
Well, my dad always wanted to do it and he'd been going there that long. His annual holiday was going there. As kids, we used to go over there. Where some go to Spain now or something like that. We used to get on the boat at Liverpool and go over the Isle of Man and watch bikes. And then I watched Mike Hayward when he made his comeback. I was only young at the time, watched all that type of thing. And then my dad had his passion and because he was doing short circuit racing, so he had a passion that he wanted to do the Isle of Man and have a go at it. So he went to see his bank manager. He worked out figures how much it was going to cost. This was 1983, this now, in the Diamond Jubilee Manx. And he worked out figures and he needed a couple of grand. So he went to the bank manager and said, any chance of having a bit of a loan? He said, what's it for? He said, new windows in the house and the roof. So the bank manager said, yeah, we'll give you the money. So my dad had that. And then he took a bit more out so that he could replace a window or two. But then he had the rest to go to the Isle of Man. And he never told my mum for, I don't know, maybe 20 years after he actually sort of come out with it in conversation.
You are joking.
That he actually took more out. I know. But bikes in the old house we lived in, the garage was part of downstairs of the big house we had. So all his Manx Nortons are in there. And then I can remember going in there as a kid and like most kids had toys, like I had a toolbox and I'd stand at the side of him pretending I was fixing the bikes for him and stuff like that. So yeah, that was, I suppose, mine and my brother's sort of passion with that. You know, we're just brought up as like second nature around motorbikes, like most people have been as well. Like if they brought up their dad used to race you, it was a passion just for me to sort of go and do it once. But I think when some people sort of look at the Isle of Man, they're like it's such a global thing now. It's like worldwide. But to me, it'd been a holiday first going there every year, and then the bikes was just something that was going on at the time. So the attraction was to go and do the Isle of Man, but it's not an attraction like I sort of needed to do it. I just sort of, if I do it once, tick a box and all that. But once I got there, I got the TT bug then. That was it.
If I had £1 for everyone who'd said, I just want to do it once, but actually that pull then was just so strong, it just kept you coming back. And first of all, actually, before we move on, people will know you as Paul Moz Owen. Where did that nickname come from?
Well, there was a cartoon years ago on telly called Moz Chops. It was a bit like Morph. I don't know if anybody remembers Morph, but this was a dinosaur on this island. I don't actually know what it was about, but he was called Moz Chops. And apparently, as a kid, I'm chopsy, and once I start talking, I can't stop. So they said, look at the chops on him, like my chops is always going like. So then they just called me Moz after that. And it sort of stuck. So like people say, well, is your middle name Morris? I said, no, it's just M-O-Z, Moz. Like even the teachers in school called me it because everybody called it me. Like, yeah, well, most people I know are Chopsy as well. Like, but I was always like one of them. I was the youngest in that gang and I was trying to be the big lad in this gang of lads 4 or 5 years older than me, my brother's age and all that. And it was all like not had a hard life. I'd had a good life, but I got educated by older lads. So I had a choice, be the old lad in a bunch of younger lads or the young lad in a bunch of older lads who were starting to drink and meeting girls and all that. So it was more appetizing to go that way, if you know what I mean. Like, but I was quite chopsy, so hence the nickname Moz Chops.
How much were you sort of involved in biking at that point, sort of making that decision between sort of spending your attention and putting your attention into that as opposed to going out and, like you say, sort of drinking and following that sort of crowd?
Well, where I live, it's a little village in Llangollen, and the roads are a lot like the mountain section on the Isle of Man. So I had a little 50cc. And then when you're 16, lads wanted bikes. Now they don't want bikes. They drive a PlayStation or something like, or whatever they have now, computer consoles or whatever. Like, but back then, a bike was like when you're 16, you had to get like a 50cc bike. And then I was just brought up around that. Like my first ever motorbike was when I was 16. All my mates, because their dads had bikes and all that, they had them when they were like 8, 9, 10. But I never had one, so I sort of craved one. And then I was like an idiot on the road. I was absolutely mental, to be honest. So part of the passion of going racing was because I was an idiot on the road and I was going to hurt myself. But I got a big buzz off racing cars and just go out, just being an idiot, basically. But then I stuck myself in the back of a car, had the ends of my fingers sewn back on, big chunk out my shoulder. And I went to the doctors on the Monday and I was actually booked in for the Monday morning appointment for them to sign my license for me to go road racing for medical. So I walk in now on the Monday, all fingers bandaged up, broken ribs, arm in a cast, big chunk out my shoulder. And he said, "Oh, you've had an accident?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I need to go on the sick, but can you also sign my race license for me, my application form?" And he said, "What for?" I said, "To go bike racing." And he said, "Is that wise?" I said, "There's no cars on a racetrack, so it's safer for me to be on a track." And my dad agreed, and I still had the bike afterwards, but I never use one on the road now. I just think it's too dangerous. Like,
I don't know whether it's a hindsight thing, looking back and realising maybe how dangerous you were out on the road. Do you remember any conversations that maybe your dad had with you at that point to say, you need to stop this sort of behaviour?
No, because he sort of let me get on with it in a way. Even all my mates, we were just like idiots on the road and all that. And yeah, nobody sort of gave me guidance. I just sort of, I suppose when I said I wanted to go racing, I suppose he was a bit for it at the time. But I can't remember him saying, "Right, well, let's do this," like I had to fund it all myself. And because my dad's like had just stopped racing. So like, I suppose he's still paying off the bank loan for the windows and the roof on the house. Yeah, I suppose we did have a little chat and I did say that I want to go and do the Isle of Man. And like when first went to 96, he was there with me, he's like, he went there as a bit of a mentor for me as well. Like, but he always used to tell me to slow down on the racetrack. And then it sort of seemed weird because you're there out to race and win, but my dad just wanted me to slow down and said, just take your time, But I suppose that's a father protecting me.
What about your mum in all of this?
Yeah, well, my dad was into bikes before he met my mum, and it was just his passion. He wasn't one for going out drinking. If you ask him what football is, he wouldn't even know now. He's not one bit interested in any other sports other than bikes. Even Formula One, it was always motorbikes with my dad, and that's it. I suppose he was just like tunnel vision, focused on them. Always liked nice cars, but never did nothing with them. I just polish them, but his bikes were like his passion. So my mum, I suppose she's seen him doing it as a passion and him doing his racing as a bit of a jolly thing. And then when he went to the Isle of Man, I know she was nervous at the time back in, when did he do it? 83, 85, 86 at the Manx. But I suppose she's seen it as, oh, well, I've been to all the race meetings. I've been over the Isle of Man. I don't need to go, Like she stayed at home and stayed as mum at home, if you know what I mean, and wife and all that. But even when I started, she was supportive, but she just used to tell me to take my time, and just enjoy it. But I think when I got more competitive, I think she could see the stress and strains that I was going under, that I had to feel like I had to do well and compete. When my dad never had that, he just went there for like a nice ride round, if you know what I mean, to say he'd done it.
Why, Paul, do you think that it was so different for you then? Why was it so important for you to do well as opposed to, I suppose, as you talk about your dad, just enjoy it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe it goes back to me being the youngest one of the gang on our BMXs and all these lads are doing jumps and all that. And I struggled. So I was always maybe out there with that competitive edge that I have to beat people. And like even now with my son's 24. If we're walking down the street, I have to beat him to the end of the road. I don't know why. It's just, yeah. So maybe me with the racing, even going out on a bike ride before I started racing, I had to be the first one to the end of that street on the bike. Like same as anything. I don't know. It's a bit of a nuisance sometimes having this sort of passion of having to be first. But I soon realised when I got to such a level bike racing that I wasn't going to be first up against bike racers because they're a different breed. But
you have had a successful racing career, and I think if we go back to the fact that you knew you wanted to do the Isle of Man, talk us through your journey once you had hobbled into that doctor's surgery and had your licence approved. He signed it, presumably. What happened then? What do you remember?
I can remember going out of there and I was on such a high because I went to see my boss and I said, there we go, there's my sick note. I'm off work like 8 weeks. And he said, what are you going to do now? I said, I'm going back to get my bike and to get it all fixed up. And hopefully I'll be racing in 4 weeks, something like that. And he'd seen his backside a bit because I was off work 8 weeks and I wanted to go racing in 4 weeks. But it never quite happened, because I had all like nerve damage at the end of my fingers and stuff like that. But just from getting on the bike like that, and then a first ever race was Three Sisters. I had a little pickup van and it had no back on it, so we used to chuck the bike in the back, go to Three Sisters at Wigan. I thought I was like Joey Dunlop at the time on these test days because there's nobody there. But my first ever race, I finished second to last. And I thought, well, hang on, I've got like nice shiny levers, nice shiny bike. Why aren't I winning? And these lads were turning up with damaged bikes, scuffed levers, and like it was a bit of an image thing, I thought, I was like, yeah, well, look smart, you go quick. But I had a shock of my life when that happened because lads were just turning up. Bikes that they crash every weekend, and then but still quicker than me. And then I sort of got my head into gear then, and I thought, right, well, let's concentrate on racing. Let's move up from the 125 start, moving up to club level then. From like track days to club level. Yeah, I think it just went from there. My passion was just like, I need to be out there. I need to be sort of like the best I can out on track. So it sort of like all just moved up. And then somebody said to me about the Ulster Grand Prix in Ireland. I think I started racing in 91 and this was 94. I went to Dundrod, the Ulster Grand Prix. And I think I finished 20th. And I absolutely loved doing the road racing. I think because I'm a past round here where I live, like riding on the roads. And then I went to the Northwest year after that. And I said, right, what's bigger than the Northwest? And he was like, right, I need to tick the box of the TT. So I'd done it. I can remember being there, my first ever Monday morning practice it was. And I was so nervous. And we get up on the start line now. And there's like John McGuinness, Bruce Anstey, Dave Jeffries, and myself as newcomers. I was stood there. And the rain was about a foot high bouncing off the road. I remember a bloke standing there in the middle of the track now, and this is so bizarre because I didn't actually know what he's doing until years after. Now you'd think he's taking a selfie of the start line of himself in a selfie, but it was actually a light meter because it was too dark. So once it got to such a light, 4:30 in the morning, he was like, right, lads, warm your engines up, we're going in 20 minutes. And then I said, well, isn't there like a newcomer's bus or something like that for us? And they said, yeah, we did that yesterday. So I'd actually missed a bus to go around on. So I didn't actually know where I was going other than watching a video 2 weeks before. And I think they pointed John to go with like Ian Simpson, me with Jim Moody or something like that. So I get as far as the gooseneck now and I fall off at the gooseneck, first ever lap. And I thought, you know what, I don't want to do this. This is too dangerous because I did actually go around in a car. I tell a lie. I went around in a car with this bloke and I went round in the back of somebody's transit van. And he was telling me what he did on a 350 Manx Norton. Not actually a TZ Yamaha 250, which was total different. So whatever he told me was like, yeah, didn't compare to what I was doing. And I fell off and I sat there in the fog in the rain on that Monday morning and I thought, right, I want to go home. Yeah, I don't want to do this. But then I went out the next day and then it started to click a bit then. And I could learn roads quite quick. I still can now. If I go to, say, somewhere up in Scotland now, I could drive there in 2 years' time and get to the exact same place without a map. Once I see it, it's sort of there. I sort of know what I'm doing. Like, so the track sort of come quite easy to me in a way because there was no like PlayStation games back then. There was none of this stuff to do with Milky. There was none of that. You just turned up and right, there's your novice jacket. There's a track. Off you go. Enjoy. Don't crash. Morning practice as well. Like so surreal. That was like I was in lying in bed at 2:00 in the morning thinking I can't sleep. I need to be up in 2 hours. And I said to Steve Islop the day before, have you got any tips? And he said, wear dark visor because of the sun. And there was another lad from Downchester way and a big Tim Leach. And I said to him, have you got any advice? Loads of tear-offs. But I'd never ever used a tear-off in my life before. And you have to have a flat visor to put it on for it to seal or to sit flat on. Well, I had a curved visor. And I had that much duct tape trying to hold about 10 tear-offs on his helmet with the darkest visor ever. It was like a welder's mask. So I couldn't even see where I was going at. And maybe that's why I fell off at the gooseneck, I don't know. And that was it. Once I got my next session in, I was like absolutely loving it. And then the next session after that, Mick Lofthouse got killed. And Mick was one of them that sort of, I was like trying to learn off because I was doing British Championship at the time. And like Mick was there with the 125 and 250, so like he gave me a bit of guidance. But he said what you need to do is learn the track a bit more, then come and see me, and then I can talk you through them corners. It's pointless him taking me around and me not actually knowing what is happening in my head. But once I got it in my head what was happening, I could talk to him about it. But then he got killed that morning, and it sort of put me back a step, and I'm thinking, oh God, I don't want to be here. And then I just carried on because I thought, well, I'm here now for the 2 weeks. Let's just do it. And it's sort of strange how it can flip from so good, so bad over there, and then flip back to so good again.
You've always been very honest about that side of things and how much seeing the downsides affects you as a rider, but also as a friend, as a person who's just so involved in that community. And I think we always say for people who don't really get this passion and this pull and this drive to do it, it's a really hard thing to understand how you can go through what's quite a traumatic thing to go through, losing somebody particularly who was helping you out in your first trip around the TT course, and how you can then kind of, okay, park that and carry on going. It's a hard thing. That it takes a lot of mental resilience.
Yeah, it's a lot. I spoke to quite a few people about this, and then if you let it get to you, like my mum passed away 10 years ago now. We found out like at Christmas time she had cancer, and they give her 8 weeks. That was the hardest 8 weeks ever, because I'm like one of these people. I've never had money to do anything. I've always had to build my own bikes in the garage and do all this. If I sort of break it, I fix it. If I can't fix it, I'll find a way of fixing it. But I couldn't fix my mum, and that absolutely messed with my head big time. That was in 2014. But just going back to like seeing all these deaths around the Isle of Man on the roads and all that, you sort of put it at the back of your head and you think, I can't think about it now. I need to leave it. I will fix it another time. But then you go around the race season then from March till October. And then when October time comes, November, the dark nights, you start to think about it. Or I did anyhow. It's sort of there, but the way to get rid of it is to plan next year's racing. And then you just shut a box on it again. And like I did, was it 23 years at Isle of Man, 27 years racing tour or something like that. And then when I did finally stop racing, I was okay until October time. And then when that box wanted to open again, I had nothing to focus on. And I found it so hard then. I didn't really have anybody to talk to, because there's nobody really who you can talk to. And it's so hard, so you have to deal with it yourself. And then the only people I could talk to were the sort of fellow racers. But not everybody wants to talk about it, because it's like, it's gone now. It was yesterday's news. Let's focus on doing the job again. And I suppose like military people are the same as well. They see a lot of bad stuff in wars. So maybe that, how they come out, they all struggle. A lot of soldiers, don't they, when they come out the army and all that. Like, so I found it really hard in end of 18 and 19. So I went back and I thought, well, I need to still be involved in a way. So I was helping lads out, and it was sort of keeping me occupied. But even at home at night, when you finish work, you come home, there's no bikes to fix because you're not getting ready to race. There was just nothing like that. So it's hard to keep yourself out that dark hole. So it's not just what you actually see on track. It's all the stuff afterwards. They're not talking, because once you're out the family at the paddock, it's as if you've just been disowned in a way, and like nobody wants you. It's an awful feeling, dark place to be sometimes, but you still have to keep involved. So the only way for me to keep involved is to help like other riders, advice, and maybe go over the Isle of Man and sort things out for them, and just tell them how I got around things and worked on things, trying to get them in a good place, you know, like.
And it's great to have somebody who's been there to advise people and to be their support. And I know you've been over at MGP events and whatever, and like physically helping people out with their bikes. And you've someone who's seen real great success over here, Paul. And I think people always want to know, well, what is the best piece of advice you can give somebody who's setting out on this journey? Do you know what that would be?
I had this conversation last night with somebody else as well. Like when I was doing it, we were like the 125, 250 class. So it was a quite easy class to learn the Isle of Man on, like slower bikes. But now anybody going there now, they're like on a 600 or 1,000. Some go on a twin, but it's hard on a twin round there because it's still lapping 120 mile an hour. Speeds are going stupid round there. So for somebody to go there now as a newcomer, I just say, just go there and there's no pressure. Make sure your bikes are all sorted. If you got a team around you, have trust in the team, know what they're doing, enjoy, like walking up to the start line. They get a practice lap now before the race, where we didn't. We just used to walk out the van, up onto the start line, put your helmet on, and off to go. So you had to have 100% commitment in your bike, in yourself. I never really used to get nervous on the start line as well, because you start thinking about stuff with the bike. Is that right? Is that right? I used to do all that the day before to make sure that the bikes was all prepped. And then it was all, my head was prepped then for like racing. So I just used to go up on the start line, and I'd always be talking all that. People say, how can you talk so much and all that? So maybe that's my nerves. Maybe that's why I'm a bit nervous now and I haven't shut up. That's where the chopsy comes from, Moz chops like. But no, anybody who wants to do it, just go there and enjoy it. Don't go for lap records. Don't go for, I need to win, because there's so much pressure on lads now. They have to go out there on these big thousands and try and win. They don't. You need to just go there and just enjoy what you're doing. Just come home and try and beat your personal best lap time.
And if you, speaking 27 years ago, whenever it was you did your first TT, if somebody had said that to you, Paul, knowing, as you've already said, what your personality is like, you've got that real need to win, to be the first over the finish line, even if you're just walking down the pavement, do you think you would have listened to that?
Yes and no, because I'm a lot younger then, and I was like, I have to be first to doing this and all that. But it's such an eye-opener there when you first get there. I'm sure Glenn Irwin will tell you the same. He come from British Superbikes, and he'd gone there and he's like, wow, I've never done anything like this before. Lee Johnson was the same. I can remember him coming in off his first ever lap, and I didn't know if he's going to be sick, cry, or laugh. His face was just like motionless. There was no sort of thing there, but he was so grinning. But his eyes are wide open, like he was like sort of scared, if you know what I mean. Like, but that is like the element. So advice-wise, I suppose I was the boy at the time, but I soon had a rude awakening around that place. So the only advice I can give anybody, even top lads now, like they go in there under pressure, hickey and all that. If I could have a chat to them, I'd just say, look, just go and enjoy it. And like, because you're challenging yourself around there, you're not actually, it's all you and the bike.
You mentioned your son, and we know that your passion for bikes is obviously partly inherited from your dad. Have you passed it on to him?
He could actually ride a motorbike before he could walk properly. 18 months old, we were up and down the main road, and my mum used to tell us off and on this moped, because I'd sit on the back of the moped, we'd get going, and then he'd just hold the controls and just ride up and down. And she gave me one hell of a telling off, my mum. She said, he hasn't even got a helmet on. What happens if the police stop you? I said, Mum, he's like 18 months old. He's not, hasn't got a helmet. Helmet won't fit him. He hasn't got a license. I can't ban him and all that. He's not old enough. So he's been brought up around bikes. First birthday, had a motorbike. Second birthday, he had another motorbike. I think it was more my passion, that, though. And then when he used to come away with me, we had like a mini moto in the paddock. We had stabilizers on it, and then we'd go around with that. And I did have a chat with him last year, and he's not into bikes that much, to be honest. I asked him why. One of the things that sticks in my mind was because he was born when I was out in the Isle of Man in 2000. I had to fly home to Liverpool and I get to Wrexham Hospital, and I just got into labour ward to see him being born. And then I was back in the Isle of Man next day, back racing again. That was in 2000. So every year he had his birthday in the Isle of Man. So every year Paul Dobbs would come along with his kids, John McGuinness with his kids, other riders, and then we'd have a big party down the bottom of the paddock. And the year after, my lad would say to me, how come like little Johnny's not here, or like Claire or Susie and all that? Like, well, the dad had an accident last year and he's not here no more. But as he got older, he sort of understood that they'd been killed racing. So the families went going over to the Isle of Man. So he's seen a lot of death over there as well. And it seemed to shock him saying that every year there were different kids at his party. I think it might have affected him. So I think maybe he's seen a danger side of it. And then as he's growing up, because he was in the pits with me when he was 2017, 2018 at the Manx Grand Prix, the Classic TT. And I think there's somebody killed in that race as well. And it sort of sunk home to him then how dangerous the sport is, and his dad's doing it. So I suppose that affected me a bit as well. But I suppose you blank it out as a racer. You don't know that type of thing, what your family's going through and all that. But when we did have a sit-down chat after, he came out with that stuff. And it seemed a bit, oh, God, if I'd have known that, maybe I wouldn't have done it. We got him into rugby. He was quite good at that, actually. And then we got him to gymnastics. Because the rugby was more, in the summertime, they don't play, do they? for rugby teams. So the coach said, keep them fit, keep them active. And we said, like doing what? And they said, well, look at Shane Williams for Wales, top rugby player. He's an ex-gymnast. So I found a gymnast club down the road here, so I took him there. And he never picked a rugby ball up again. And I'm like one of them people, I can't just sit on the side. I was watching him doing some tumbles, so I said, Thomas, put your toes, stretch up in the air, keep your arms straight. So one of the main coaches came up to me and said, do you mind being quiet? I said, yeah, but I can see what he's doing wrong. And I said, well, if you can see what he's doing wrong, put a T-shirt on, a coach's T-shirt, and come on the floor with us. So I become a volunteer coach. And Thomas went on he won 3 Welsh championships and come second in Britain. And then he met a girl and he's got a good job now. So he's doing like really good for himself. He doesn't do gymnastics anymore. He stopped that, but he's still like a fitness freak. You want to see him? Yeah, I'm sure you could iron his shirt on his stomach. It's that flat, like.
And you mentioned, Paul, that you were back out on track last weekend. What were you doing?
When COVID hit, I said, right, like, 'cause it's bad enough when you stop racing, there's nothing to do. So when COVID hit and we had to sit in the house, I thought I need to do something. And the bike popped up on Marketplace on Facebook. So I went and bought it quick before this major lockdown come down. A YZF 750 Classic Superbike. But the bike was an absolute nail. It was like a big hole in a tank. It wouldn't run. So my project was, if I'm going to be locked up for 6 months at home, I want to be doing something. So got this bike, stripped it all down. We built it all up. And I was going to use that as a bit of a track bike. But then it become a bit of a... well, if I put like Owens forks in, I'll take the standard ones. I'll get some fancy Owens forks in it now, and I'll put some fancy wheels in it, and I'll get the engine all built up, and we'll get carbon fibre bits in, we'll get like a new Maxton shock in the back. And so this little cheap project sort of turning out into a bike that could go out and do the classic TT. It's got pit lane limiter, it's got quick shifter, you name it, everything's on this bike. And then my son said to me, he said, how come you've gone to town on this bike, Dad? I said, well, because I'm not racing, I can actually afford to do a bike up properly, and then buy some nice parts for it. So I'd done all that, and it's been sat in the garage for like 6 months. And I thought, you know what? I've had a good year so far, so let's go and get a track day at Alton Park. So I went there, and I was that nervous, and I've never been nervous in racing for years. And I'm at a track day now, and I was physically shaking, but I went out on track. It was wet in the morning, and then it dried up in the afternoon. And I was passing lads left, right, and centre. And what I thought I'd lost through all these years racing, all just come back to me. And now I feel like I've got a bit of a bug again. But I've said I'm not going to go racing Isle of Man or anything like that again. I've done my time there. I've enjoyed it. It's been good. But to go back now, I think I'd still do okay there. But no, I'm coming at 53 after Christmas, and I'm like, yeah, I like sitting on the settee now and having a cup of tea and stuff like, like, but I do like going in the garage and tinkering. But I think, yeah, I think my racing days are gone, but yeah, you never know. I might turn up at Aintree next year or Alton Park, a little club race or something like that. And just have a wobble about at the back or something like.
It sounds like there's still something to be said for you getting out there on the track. It's almost like you're convincing yourself, Paul, that you're not going to do it again.
Yeah, I know. Well, one of the things, I spoke about this to a few lads. When I stopped at the end of 18, I found it really hard losing like William Dunlop, James Cowton, Dan Neen, Bud Jackson. There was a load that year. And I said, I can't do this anymore. So when I stopped at the end of 18, I tried to shut the door on everything. I booked a holiday for TT the year after in Greece. So we went out to Greece, but I'm on my phone looking at the results and phoning people up. And I got people phoning me up when I'm sat on the beach. Oh, I'm struggling with this corner and the setting and the gear and what do you advise, so I come back from Greece and then I was like, right, flight. I'm taking my case straight to the Isle of Man, and I got off one flight straight on the other and straight over the Isle of Man, because I found it hard walking away from the sport that I'd done for so long because everybody else is still doing it. And then when COVID hit, nobody was racing. And it felt like, oh, that's okay. The book's closed now. That's me done with racing. I'm okay. I go in the garage, play with a few bikes, that type of thing. And then people started racing again. And then you get back involved again. And it's like, but I'm happy sat I'm not sat over the fence. I'm sat on the fence, if that makes sense. I enjoy watching lads go around now. I enjoy going up to them and giving them advice and saying, well, try this or do that, and just hold back a bit on that corner because you can carry your speed down the straight a lot more after. And I get a bit of a buzz off that now, not so much sort of riding a bike. But saying that, I went out last week and I got a buzz from riding a bike again. And I think I'm too old now, but I'm actually a couple of weeks older than John McGuinness and Rutter, and they're still top of the game. I'm 10 years younger than Ian Locker, so it's like, oh, do I, don't I? So, no, I'm not going to do it. I can say it on the podcast now that that's me done. But you might see me at like 1-2 small club meetings, maybe some parade laps, but nothing like the Isle of Man again.
Okay, I'm not going to hold you to that, Paul. But we've talked a little bit about your dad. I know he had his birthday not that long ago, and is he still as passionate about bikes as well?
Oh, my dad was gutted because like he just turned 88. And the plan was, like, my brother took him out to Benidorm, but I couldn't go out Benidorm because of work. So I said, I'm going to bring him over to the Classic TT. And our flights were sort of cancelled on the way out. So we had to change him for another day. And there was no racing the next day. And it was like, I thought, well, we're not going to make that anyhow. We're not going to make that event. So that weekend, there was Ultra. So my dad was a bit disappointed he wasn't going back over the Isle of Man. But that weekend, there was a classic racing on at Oulton Park, which is only like 30 miles from us. So I took him to Oulton Park and he absolutely loved it. 'Cause as soon as we got in through the gate, we walked in by the holding bay. There was like 30 Manx Nortons there. And my dad's walking around looking at him. And then he's sort of like nodding his head and he's looking at him. And I said, that's a nice one. No, it's a copy. No, that's a nice one there, Dad. No, it's a copy of the original Manx because my dad had all the original Manx Nortons in a day. And he'd seen this old bloke in the corner with this old tatty thing that was dripping oil. And my dad said, that's a proper Manx Norton. Let's go talk to him. And he was in his element talking about the old Manx, not these like ones that have been like made now to reproduction ones. So yeah, he enjoyed all that and doing that. But he was a bit gutted he never went to the Isle of Man. And my dad's passion now. Anybody who knows my dad, like if you come over to my house, Liz, I'll take you to my dad's. And he's just got pictures of bikes everywhere. And he's just so proud and, about what he's done, what I've done, what his mates did racing. He can tell you all about Mike Hayward, Jeff Duke. Ask him what he did this morning, he doesn't know. But ask him how many teeth first gear have got on the 1956 Manx Norton, and he will tell you everything about it, about that gearbox. It's sort of crazy. And the sad thing is, when he passes away, whoever moves on, is he's going to take all that knowledge with him. And so that's the sad part about it, but he's had a great life. He's loved everything. And everywhere he goes, he's always got a bike badge. Or if he sees somebody walk down the street with a TT hat, he walks straight up to them. And he talks as much as me, to be honest.
It would be lovely, Paul, to hear that conversation between the two of you, actually, and sort of almost record those memories, because like you say, they are so, so precious, aren't they?
Yeah, I know. It's, just general things in life, the stuff he comes out with. And I said, well, when did you do that? Like he tells me about certain things. And, they did like Land's End to John O'Groats on bikes in the 70s, on motorbikes. And they got up to the top of Scotland and they were absolutely shattered. He said his bum was sore, his knees are sore, his fingers are cold. And he said this woman of 90-year-old come up on a push bike, a bit like what Paddy McGuinness has just done, but she did like Land's End John O'Groats. And she pulls up and she looks at these, like my dad and all his mates and all that, and then says, oh, you've had a good trip up? And they said, yeah, we're cold, we're aching. And she said, yeah, well, I've just cycled up and I'm going to cycle back. So my dad said it put into like perspective what he was doing. He thought he was doing good, and then seeing what they were doing, like some older woman in the 90s cycling up and all that. So I think it's certain things like the stories he just comes out with, and certain ones about the Isle of Man, and I think Bob McIntyre, my dad was watching the senior race. Bob McIntyre was coming up and he forgot to put his gloves inside his helmet. So we got my dad to warm his bike up at the side of the track or hold it because the mechanics are running off doing something. And Bob went back to get his gloves and my dad's standing there now with Bob McIntyre's bike. And he only came out with this about 6 months ago. Yeah, these different stories that I didn't even know about. So every day's a like learning day off my dad, you know, like, but ask him what he did this morning, he wouldn't know. But ask him about bikes and his passion and where he stopped, who he's seen racing there. Yeah. I'm just a sort of 10% of what he is of knowledge. Thing is that when they go, they take that history with them, though, isn't it? Like,
how lovely, though, to have something that you are so passionate about and that has been such a love when you look at your dad and you can see the joy that it still brings him.
Yeah. I'm just looking at my cabinet in the corner now. I think I've got like 52 like finished replicas, bronze and silvers. And then some days I'll get a knock on the door, Sunday morning, 9 o'clock. And my dad's sort of stood there with these people. And I said, "You okay, Dad?" He said, "Yeah, been to the car boot sale 10 mile down the road, got talking to these bikers. I brought them up to see your TT trophies, you don't mind, do you?" And like I can be stood there in my underpants. And he's right, come on in, lads, look at Paul's trophies. And
talk about the trophies in the cabinet, we should say. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, not my wife once. Yeah. But no, he just does stuff like because he thinks because it's bikes and everybody's on the same wavelength, which I suppose, yeah, and all that. Like, but I go to the pub maybe if I just pop out for a pint and all that, and then he's there and then he's talking to somebody and then he's calling me over. Paul, these lads are from America and they're bikers, you know. Can they come round to yours tomorrow, see the bikes? And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah. So, yeah, well, I suppose people like to see all that type of stuff. And so, that's part of my DNA, I suppose. Like, I suppose if I turn out like my dad, I haven't done too bad, like, so.
Oh, well, Paul, it's been lovely talking to you. I think what we all think is that we may well see you back over here at some point in the Isle of Man, even if maybe a parade lap. Would you be up for that?
Yeah, well, I did a parade lap once and I was passing Freddie Spence over Balacry jump and I thought I'd show off, pull a bit of a wheelie. And I almost fell off the back of the bike. So I thought, right, well, if I do a parade lap again, yeah. Even with the parade lap, Beth, it was funny because I wasn't allowed to go to the front and set off with the likes of McGuinness and all them boys. Like, I got, like, moved further back. And I could remember going off now and I thought, right, I need to get to the front because John McGuinness is on his Vimto 250. And I'm not sure if Bruce Anstey was in it as well. Like, so I pushed as hard as I could, past all these people, get to the front. And I've got a picture of me coming out to Craig, and I'm actually leading a parade lap. It became a bit of a race over the mountain. And there's me leading it, John McGuinness behind me. There's Mick Grant, Philip McCallan, Steve Plater's on, I think he's on Kevin Swanson's 500 GP bike. And then I got down into the nook, and I led to the nook. And it's only a parade lap, this, but it never quite is a parade lap when you're out with a gang of lads on bikes. And I thought I'd then come over the line first because, like, the organisers won't be happy about that. So I waved, like, McGuinness come up the inside of me and I just followed him over the line. But then we come in at the end and they're all getting called into the winner's enclosure, the top lot. So I went to turn in and they're all, no, you can't go in there. You go up the top, up the far end, like, and I thought, okay, maybe I've not won a TT, and maybe I don't deserve to be in there. Like, but yeah, I might come back on a parade lap. I might get the 250 back out, and yeah, I could have just said yes, couldn't I? But I do talk too much, and yeah, you're going to be up for 2 days editing all this. It'll be like, hi, we got Paul. Yeah, race bikes. Thanks, Paul. See ya.
Oh, not at all,
sorry,
Paul.
Beth.
No, it's been lovely to talk to you, and we do look forward to seeing you back here on the Isle of Man. Hopefully, fingers crossed next year.
Yeah, I'll be over. I'll come find you in the paddock and have a chat.
Paul Moz Owen. Great to catch up with Moz there, or Chopsy as I shall now call him. And as I said in the introduction, it was a very different sort of chat really, but one that's really important to have because I think when you consider motorcycle racing as a whole, you need to maybe understand what every part of that journey looks like. So much more that I could have spoken to Paul about, and maybe we'll catch up about the ins and outs of his racing career at another time. This podcast is brought to you by Kawasaki Insurance. Again, their website is kawasaki-insurance.co.uk. And if you'd like to get involved, I'd love to hear from you. You can email me, bethsb@manxradio.com. The details are on the podcast page. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.